Ever felt that familiar surge of willpower? That rush of motivation to finally tackle a goal? Maybe it's exercising more, eating healthier, or learning a new skill, only to find yourself, a few days or weeks later, right back to your old patterns. That frustrating cycle of starting strong, then fizzling out and reverting. You're absolutely not alone in that experience. I mean, it's a universal, incredibly frustrating part of being human, I think. We often point the finger at ourselves, right? Convinced we just lack discipline or willpower. But what if the common culprit isn't you or your willpower, but rather a flawed system? We're going to explore a pretty radical idea today. Willpower isn't infinite. Think of it more like a muscle that fatigues throughout the day, a resource that simply depletes. Our guide for building lasting change, behavioral science expert James Clear, whose work is really at the heart of our deep dive today, challenges this traditional view head-on. He said something profound in his book, Atomic Habits, which has become kind of foundational philosophy. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Now, that's a powerful shift in perspective, isn't it? Instead of focusing on massive overhauls or these monumental efforts, Clear introduces us to atomic habits. These are tiny, almost imperceptible 1% daily improvements. They aren't just small actions. They are the fundamental building blocks, the molecular components, if you will, of remarkable compounded results. The true focus here isn't solely on the grand aspiration, the distant goal, but on designing the practical, repeatable processes that automatically get you there.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're going to unpack why our conventional, often willpower-dependent approach to personal change so frequently fails, despite our absolute best intentions. Then, we're going to equip you with a scientific, actionable framework drawn directly from James Clear's work and, supported by some cutting-edge research. It's not just about initiating new habits, but making them stick for good. This deep dive will hopefully be your guide to transforming your life through consistent, tiny improvements. And as a crucial bonus, we're going to bust a really pervasive and frankly quite discouraging myth about how long it actually takes to form a habit. That should free you from a common pitfall.
Okay, so let's kick things off by really tackling this idea of willpower, or as Clear calls it, the willpower lie. We've all been there, right? You wake up on January 1st, brimming with motivation, convinced this is the year. I've definitely had those moments, writing a list of 100 things I was going to change. And by, January 7th, my running shoes were still in the box and the cookies were gone.
It's almost comical how predictable it can be. We try to overhaul our entire lives in one go, relying solely on that initial burst of determination. But as James Clear points out, the problem isn't you, it's your system. Those bad habits persist not because you lack desire, but because you have the wrong system for change. We just put too much pressure on willpower alone.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the very concept of willpower as this infinite, boundless resource is, well, it's fundamentally flawed. Research, which James Clear cites and is backed up by work from psychologists like Kelly McGonigal, shows that willpower behaves much more like a muscle. It gets fatigued as you use it throughout the day. Every decision you make, every act of self-control, resisting a snack, focusing on a tough task, holding your tongue, it depletes this finite mental energy. So you might start your day with a full tank, feeling capable of anything, but by the evening, after work, family, countless choices, that tank is running on fumes. And that makes it incredibly difficult to resist temptations or force yourself into new, challenging behaviors when your willpower is at its lowest ebb.
That truly resonates. It's why resisting that donut in the morning meeting might feel easy, but by 8 p.m. after a long day, the whole bag of chips somehow vanishes. So if willpower is so unreliable, isn't there still some place for sheer grit for pushing through, especially when you're starting out? Or is it truly always about the system, even when motivation feels super high?
That's a great question, and it really highlights the nuance here. I mean, grit is valuable, no doubt, but relying solely on it for sustained change often falters because our motivation itself isn't constant. B.J. Fogg, another really influential behavioral scientist, offers a crucial insight with his motivation wave concept. He basically explains that motivation naturally ebbs and flows. It rises, it falls. When your motivation is high, sure, you can tackle harder things. But when it's low, even simple tasks can feel like climbing a mountain, relying solely on this fluctuating motivation. It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand. You might make great progress when the tide is high, but when that wave recedes, your foundation just crumbles. And this is precisely why that rigid, drastic overhaul mentality, expecting huge, immediate, sustained change, so often backfires. It just ignores the natural ups and downs of our internal states and basically sets us up for disappointment.
That motivation wave idea is incredibly relatable. We've all had those days where we feel on top of the world, ready to conquer anything, and then other days where just getting out of bed feels like a win. So instead of trying to surf that unpredictable waves, we should be building something more robust, something that works even when the wave is, at its lowest point.
Precisely. And that's where the 1% improvement philosophy from Atomic Habits truly shines. Rather than striving for these dramatic overnight transformations, which often need unsustainable amounts of willpower and peak motivation, we focus on tiny, consistent changes. Think of it like compound interest in finance. A small deposit made consistently doesn't look like much day to day, but over years, it accumulates into something substantial. You get that exponential growth. The same principle applies to our habits. A 1% improvement each day, every single day, it compounds. You don't just add 1%. That 1% builds on the previous day's 1%. It creates this exponential growth curve over the long term. James Clear brilliantly describes habits as the compound interest of self-improvement. It's about accumulating these small advantages that together create remarkable, sometimes seemingly miraculous results. Imagine getting just a tiny bit better each day for a year. You end up nearly 37 times better. And it works the other way too. Get 1% worse each day and you'll basically decline to near zero. It's a powerful concept.
Yeah, and what's so empowering about this perspective, I think, is that it fundamentally shifts the blame. It's not about personal failure, it's about system design. If you're struggling, it's not because you're lazy or incapable, but because your system for change is faulty. That just liberates you from that crushing cycle of self-blame, and instead it gives you a clear, actionable path. Design better structures, create better systems, and the desired behaviors are much more likely to follow. It's about empowering you to build better structures for success, rather than constantly battling an exhausted willpower muscle that, frankly, was never meant for that kind of sustained fight. Okay, so if willpower isn't the key and we need a better system, how do we actually design that system? How do we build these atomic habits brick by brick? Well, it all starts with understanding what James Clear calls the invisible architecture. At its core, all human behavior, and by extension, habit formation, is built on a fundamental four-step psychological process. It's what psychologists often call the habit loop: cue, craving, response, and reward.
And this isn't just some abstract theory, right? It's the underlying psychological engine for pretty much everything we do, from the good stuff like brushing your teeth to the less desirable things like mindlessly scrolling social media. James Clear has distilled this understanding into 4 really actionable laws of behavior change, one for each step of the loop. And these laws give us a practical blueprint to intentionally design our environment and our actions. By truly understanding this loop, you gain the power to promote the behaviors you want and, just as importantly, dismantle the ones you don't. It's about taking conscious control of your brain's autopilot functions, essentially, shaping your choices.
All right, let's dive into these 4 laws then, starting with the first one, which focuses on the cue, that initial spark. So law number 1, make it obvious. The cue is that initial trigger, the signal that kicks off a habit. It could be a specific time, a place, a sound, a feeling, anything that tells your brain, hey, it's time to do X. To successfully build new habits, our environment needs to be filled with clear, undeniable cues. We need to make it almost impossible to miss the chance to do the thing we want to do.
Precisely. Think about it. If your running shoes are right by the door, you're way more likely to see them and be cued to go for a run than if they're buried in the back of your closet, right? This is where habit stacking comes in as an incredibly powerful strategy. It's a specific, really effective form of what psychologists call an implementation intention. Instead of trying to invent a new cue from scratch, which is actually hard work for your brain, you strategically link a new habit to an existing, already established one. Your current habits, they act like anchors. Through this fascinating process called synaptic pruning, where the brain strengthens used connections and weakens unused ones, your brain has already built strong, efficient neural pathways for those old habits. When you link a new behavior to an existing one, you're basically piggybacking on those pre-existing robust pathways. It makes it significantly easier for your brain to adopt the new behavior without much conscious effort. The formula is beautifully simple and really effective. After current habit, I will new habit.
So it's like using the well-worn paths already wired in our brains to help create new ones. It makes the new habit feel less like a struggle and more like a natural next step. Can you give us some examples of what that looks like day to day?
Absolutely. James Clear provides some excellent practical examples that you can adapt to almost any goal. For instance, after I pour my cup of coffee each morning, I will meditate for 1 minute, the coffee. That's an undeniable existing cue. Or after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. That transition from work to home becomes a powerful trigger. Another one. After I sit down to dinner, I will say one thing I'm grateful for that happened today. Integrates gratitude seamlessly. And for safety or accountability, something like, after I put on my running shoes, I will text a friend or family member where I'm running and maybe how long I'll be. These examples just show how you can weave a new habit right into the fabric of your existing routine, leveraging what you already do without thinking. And you can even chain multiple small habits together, creating entire habit stacks. Each completed habit acts as the cue for the next one. Like, imagine a morning routine stack. After I pour my coffee, I'll meditate for 60 seconds. After I meditate, I'll write my to-do list. After I write my list, I'll immediately start my first task. Each step just flows naturally into the next, building momentum, making the whole sequence feel almost automatic over time. To find the right triggers, you can brainstorm your existing daily habits, the things you do without fail, like getting out of bed, brushing teeth, eating lunch, turning off lights. You can also list those invariable daily things like the sun rising, getting a text, a specific song ending. These are all potential anchor habits just waiting there.
Okay, I can definitely see the power in taking the decision-making out of it. But I wonder, does that mean we lose some sense of agency? Or does it actually free up mental energy? And I guess specificity is crucial here too, right? A vague cue probably won't cut it.
That's a thoughtful point. It actually frees up mental energy. It gives you more agency where it counts, in making bigger strategic choices, not deciding when to do push-ups. And you're absolutely right about specificity. It is paramount. You have to eliminate ambiguity. James Clear actually learned this himself. He initially tried, when I take a break for lunch, I will do 10 push-ups. He realized quickly it was too vague before lunch.
Yeah.
After. Where? So he refined it to, when I close my laptop for lunch, I will do 10 push-ups next to my desk. See, that removes all doubt, makes the action immediate and clear. Vague goals like read more or eat better just lack concrete instructions. You need precise cues. After I close the door, after I brush my teeth, after I sit down at the table. The more tightly bound your new habit is to a specific cue, the better your chances of noticing when it's time to act, and crucially, acting without hesitation.
Okay, that makes sense. So for you, our listener, the challenge is, how can you make your desired good habits so obvious, so impossible to miss, that they practically jump out at you in your daily life? How can you create those visual signals or integrate them seamlessly? All right, moving on. Law number 2, make it attractive. This law deals with the craving. This isn't just a simple desire, it's that anticipation of a reward sparked by the cue that really motivates us to act. Think of it as the engine of our habits. If a habit can be made attractive, genuinely appealing, the desire for its rewards becomes a powerful force driving us forward.
Yeah, a key insight here is that our brains are incredibly wired for anticipation and reward. This is where temptation bundling becomes such a game changer. It's a clever strategy to make those tasks you need to do feel much more appealing by pairing them with something you already enjoy, something you actively crave. The mechanism is simple but really effective. It ties immediate gratification to productive behavior. You get to indulge in something fun, but only while you're doing the necessary thing, or maybe right after.
I love that. So it's not just about gritting your teeth through the boring task, but actually looking forward to the fun thing that comes with it. What are some real-world examples of how we can use temptation bundling?
Claire gives some fantastic, relatable examples. Like, you could only allow yourself to listen to your absolute favorite podcast, the one you save, just for this while you're exercising. Suddenly, that workout becomes the gateway to an enjoyable story or conversation. Or, if you have a TV series you're hooked on, you could reserve watching it exclusively for your time on the treadmill or stationary bike. These pairings make sure the needed task becomes the path to an immediate, enjoyable reward, building up a positive association over time. And, in a broader context, our motivation just thrives when habits feel inherently enjoyable. Neuroscience shows this often triggers dopamine release, that brain chemical linked to pleasure and motivation. It associates pleasure directly with the action, making us want to repeat it. It's basically hijacking your brain's reward system for good. Furthermore, don't underestimate social influence in making habits attractive. We are deeply social creatures, right? Wired to connect and conform. When you surround yourself with people who already embody the habits you want, maybe join a running club, a book group, a wellness community, whatever those positive behaviors start to feel normal, expected, and therefore much more attractive. We subconsciously try to fit in with our tribe, and if our tribe's habits are good ones, we're way more likely to adopt them ourselves. It makes the desired behavior feel like the path of least resistance, socially speaking.
That's a powerful insight. Our environment and our social circles can really shape our desires and make certain habits feel almost inevitable. So for you, our listener, the question is, what's something you love doing? Something that brings you real joy? Could you strategically pair that with a habit you need to do, making the necessary task irresistible? How can you inject a little fun into the mundane parts of your routine? Okay, law number 3, make it easy. Now we move to the response, the actual action or behavior itself. This lie is straightforward, yet really impactful. Make it easy. The easier a habit is to perform, the more likely it is you'll actually do it. The key here is reducing friction to an absolute minimum, making the desired behavior almost effortless. And that means starting incredibly, almost ridiculously small to overcome that initial hurdle, that inertia.
This is where James Clear's 2-minute rule and BJ Fogg's tiny habits philosophy really come together and offer this revolutionary kind of counterintuitive approach. The rule basically says you should scale down any new habit so it takes less than 2 minutes to perform. So instead of read more books, your habit is read one paragraph. Instead of do 50 push-ups, it's do one push-up. The psychology behind this is profound. The hardest part of almost any task is just getting started. By making that initial hurdle so incredibly low, it becomes almost impossible not to do it. This builds confidence and momentum right away, which are way more valuable early on than intensity. You're just aiming to show up, not perform a huge feat. And here's where your brain really plays a key role from a neuroscience standpoint. Repetition, even of these tiny actions, is what makes behaviors automatic. Your brain's basal ganglia, often called the brain's autopilot, gradually takes over these repeated sequences. As a habit forms, the brain dedicates minimal conscious resources to it. This involves that synaptic pruning process we mentioned, strengthening the used neural connections, making them super efficient, while letting the unused ones fade away. Like pruning for stronger growth. It makes the behavior not just automatic, but also incredibly efficient, requiring less mental effort each time. It's like paving a dirt path into a superhighway for that specific action in your brain.
So the basal ganglia is essentially streamlining the process. It makes it less of a conscious struggle and more of an ingrained, efficient reaction. That's incredible. Our brains literally become more efficient doing the things we repeat. Can you elaborate a bit more on how this translates to our daily actions? Like, how does that efficiency play out?
Absolutely. When we first learn something, like driving a car, it's a very conscious, goal-directed action. You're thinking about every single step. Check mirror, signal, check shoulder, turn the wheel.
Right.
It's exhausting. But with consistent practice, your basal ganglia steps in. It integrates all the signals, the cue, your motivation, the movements, and gradually converts that conscious sequence into an unconscious routine. There's a famous experiment with rats in a tea maze that shows this vividly. Initially, their brain activity is scattered, focused when they have to make the turn. But as they learn the task through repetition and it becomes automatic, that neural activity shifts. It becomes most prominent right at the start and the end of running the maze. It shows the basal ganglia has basically bundled the whole sequence. The brain learns to run the program with minimal oversight. It's a remarkable display of neural efficiency.
That driving analogy is perfect. When I first learned, exhausting. Now, sometimes I drive home and barely remember the journey. So how can we use this understanding of ease in our physical environment to make good habits stick and bad ones fade?
Environmental design is absolutely crucial here. You want to make desired habits as easy to access as possible and undesirable habits difficult to perform. Increase friction for bad habits, decrease it for good ones. Want to eat healthier? Put fruit and healthy snacks right on the counter, visible and reachable. Stash the junk food in an opaque container on a high shelf, maybe in the back. Planning to hit the gym after work? Have your gym bag packed and sitting by the door, or even in your car already. No mental energy spent gathering stuff. Conversely, to break bad habits, introduce friction. Trying to cut down on late-night phone scrolling. Put your actual alarm clock across the room so you have to get out of bed. Leave your phone charging in another room entirely. The more obstacles you place between yourself and a bad habit, the less likely you are to do it on impulse.
This all boils down to making the good choices effortless and the bad choices effortful. It's like setting up your environment to gently nudge you in the right direction all day long. So for our listener, consider this. How can you simplify your next desired habit so much that it literally takes 2 minutes or less? How can you physically clear the path for success? Okay, we've covered cue, craving, and response. The final crucial step in this habit loop is the reward. Law number 4, make it satisfying. This is what reinforces the entire loop, telling your brain, hey, that was good, let's do it again. It makes the behavior more likely to be repeated. We are inherently wired to seek satisfaction, and for habits to really stick, immediate gratification is absolutely essential, especially when the big long-term rewards might be months or even years away.
That's a key insight. While the ultimate rewards of good habits like better health from exercise or financial security from saving are often delayed, our brains crave immediate feedback. Now, immediate, even small rewards are incredibly powerful because they trigger that rush of dopamine we talked about. And dopamine isn't just about feeling good, it actively reinforces the behavior. It creates a strong neurological link between the action and the pleasure, making us want to repeat it. Since those long-term benefits are often distant and abstract, we need something concrete in the present moment to keep us going, to bridge that gap.
So how do we create that immediate satisfaction? Especially for something like, say, studying, where the reward of a good grade is way off.
Yeah.
How do we hack our brain's desire for that instant gratification?
One of the most effective strategies for immediate satisfaction, and also getting that visual proof of progress, is habit tracking. It's simple, but profoundly powerful. You just measure whether you performed a habit. Its function is kind of threefold. It creates a visual cue reminding you to act again. It's motivating to see your streak grow and not want to break it. And, crucially, it provides immediate satisfaction the moment you record your success. That simple act of marking it down is the mini reward. The mechanism is wonderfully straightforward. You can use a physical calendar, cross off each day, or shade a cell in a dedicated tracker, or use one of the many habit tracking apps out there. Each mark you make provides a small win, a tangible, immediate sign that you showed up, you did the thing, and this visual proof is especially critical on those bad days when you feel discouraged. Seeing your accumulated effort, that chain of check marks, can be a powerful antidote to a temporary dip in motivation. It shifts your focus from those distant, maybe abstract results to the immediate, concrete process of just showing up each day and adding another mark. It becomes a self-reinforcing loop. So it's less about the destination, more about celebrating the journey, visually represented, making the process itself rewarding. What kind of habits are best for tracking? And how do we make sure we actually do the tracking?
You can track almost anything, really, but it's most powerful for habits you're trying to kickstart, or maybe those you tend to forget easily. James Clear recommends starting with those really small daily habits, following the 2-minute rule, just to ensure you're showing up. Think. Journal 1 sentence, read 1 page, meditate 1 minute, do 1 push-up. You can also use it for weekly things like vacuum or laundry, or even monthly ones like review finances. And crucially, habit trackers are also excellent for avoidance habits, things you don't want to do. Marking a day with no alcohol, no Netflix binge, no online shopping gives you satisfaction for not doing something you're trying to quit. And you can even integrate the tracking itself into a habit stack, like after current habit, I will track my habit. That ensures you remember to record your progress, making the tracking itself habitual.
That's brilliant. It makes the act of tracking part of the habit itself, embedding it even deeper into your routine. So for you, our listener, the challenge is, how can you create a small, immediate reward for your next desired habit, even before you see those big long-term results? How can you give your brain that instant hit of satisfaction that makes it eager to come back for more tomorrow? Okay, we've now deconstructed the habit loop and its 4 laws. We've seen how behavioral science gives us this clear path forward by working with our brain's natural tendencies, not against them. This gives us concrete strategies.
And just to loop back briefly on the brain science, because it really underpins why this works. We've touched on the basal ganglia automating things, and synaptic pruning, strengthening those pathways, and dopamine driving the reward. There's even fascinating new research exploring how information flows within these habit circuits. We used to think it was mostly one way, from goal-setting areas to habit areas, but some recent work, like from Northwestern Medicine, suggests there might also be a descending spiral information flowing back from habit regions to goal regions. This kind of challenges old assumptions and opens up totally new ideas, not just for forming habits, but maybe for how we can more effectively break those really stubborn bad ones, too. If information flows both ways, maybe we can intervene differently.
Wow. So this isn't just about clever behavioral tricks or mind games. This is fundamentally about how your brain is wired. By aligning our strategies with these biological blueprints, we literally make it easier for our brains to build habits, stick to them, and maybe even dismantle the ones we don't want anymore. All right, let's transition now to a topic that has probably caused a lot of frustration and, frankly, unnecessary guilt for many of us, myself included. It's a crucial misconception that often leads to discouragement, maybe throwing in the towel right when we might be on the verge of success. The infamous 21-day myth.
Oh yeah, this is a big one. A myth that absolutely needs busting. The core idea to grasp here is that habit formation is truly a long race. It's a marathon, not some short sprint with a neat finish line. The notion that it takes 21 days to form a habit, it actually originated way back in 1960 with a plastic surgeon, Dr. Maxwell Maltz. He wrote a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. He observed that his patients seemed to take about 21 days to adjust to new features, like a new nose after surgery, or even adapt to the loss of a limb. He then kind of generalized this observation about adapting to a physical change or self-image to all habit formation, and somehow it just stuck as common wisdom, very persistent myth.
So it's just an observation in a very specific context, adapting to physical changes and then generalized way beyond that. Not even a scientific study specifically on forming behavioral habits like exercising or meditating. That context is crucial.
Exactly. And modern, rigorous research paints a vastly different picture. Scientific findings flatly contradict this 21-day idea. Studies actually show that the time it takes for a new habit to become truly automatic, second nature, can range anywhere from just 18 days all the way up to 254 days. That's a huge range. More specifically, a really important 2009 study in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that the average time for a behavior to become automatic was around 66 days. The median time, actually. So what that means basically is for most people, it takes over 2 months for a new behavior to feel truly effortless, like it's just part of who you are, done without much conscious thought. And this wide range isn't random. It depends significantly on the specific behavior. Is it simple or complex, on the individual person and on their life circumstances. Other studies and even discussions in online communities focused on habit change consistently point to averages much longer than 21 days.
This is such a critical revelation. I mean, think about it. If you've ever tried to form a new habit, pushed really hard for 3 weeks, and then maybe slipped up and felt like you failed, thinking, oh, I guess I'm just not cut out for this. You weren't failing. You were just operating under a false, scientifically shaky premise. That 21-day mark is often precisely when people give up, right when the habit might just be starting to take root.
Precisely. And that leads us straight to emphasizing the principle of consistency over speed. Since habit formation isn't this quick sprint to a finish line, but an ongoing process, patience becomes absolutely key. James Clear introduces the incredibly powerful never miss twice rule. He explains that missing a habit once, that's an accident. It happens. It has basically no measurable impact on your long-term progress. We all have off days, right? We get sick, face emergencies, or sometimes just forget. The true danger, the real derailment, isn't that single missed day. It's the spiral of repeated mistakes that often follows that first slip up. The focus should immediately shift to just getting back on track the very next day. One missed day doesn't make you a failure. 2 missed days in a row, however, that can start to establish a new unwanted pattern. It reinforces the negative story in your head.
So it's about resiliency. It's about forgiving yourself for the occasional stumble, because stumbles are inevitable, but not letting that stumble turn into a full-blown fall off the wagon. That's a much healthier way to look at it.
Absolutely. And this goes hand in hand with cautioning against that pervasive all-or-nothing mentality. Striving for perfection is often a habit killer. So many people think, if I can't do it perfectly, if I can't hit every single workout or write every single day without fail, then I shouldn't bother at all. They miss one workout, decide the whole week is shot, and just give up entirely. This trap derails progress after a single slip-up, leading to complete abandonment. The reality is, new habits should feel easy, especially at the start. If you stay consistent and maybe gradually increase the difficulty in tiny ways, the habit will get hard enough, fast enough on its own. Patience is really everything. The goal is just to show up, one tiny step at a time.
That's a huge shift in mindset, isn't it? Instead of aiming for these perfect, uninterrupted streaks, which are almost impossible, we're aiming for persistent, resilient consistency. And ultimately, that reframes the entire journey.
Yes, it completely redefines it. Rather than viewing habit formation as crossing some temporary finish line, like I want to lose X pounds by summer, or I want to run this marathon, we should reframe it as building an identity. Think, I'm someone who values their health, or I am a runner. A habit, in this sense, isn't just a temporary task to complete. It becomes a lifestyle to be lived. This perspective encourages sustainable, lifelong change because it ties the behavior directly to who you perceive yourself to be. It makes it an integral, almost non-negotiable part of your self-concept. You're not just doing a habit, you're embodying it, step by tiny, consistent step.
So today, we've really started to uncover the fascinating science behind building habits that actually last. We kick things off by debunking that pervasive and often disheartening willpower lie, showing the problem usually isn't you, it's your system. We then deconstructed the powerful 4-step habit loop, the cue, craving, response, and reward, and explored James Clear's practical 4 laws. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. We even touched on some of the fascinating neuroscience, understanding how things like synaptic pruning, the basal ganglia acting as our autopilot, and dopamine driving motivation all play a role. how our brains literally rewire themselves. And finally, we tackled and hopefully definitively dismantled that misleading 21-day myth, replacing it with the much more realistic and empowering truth of long-term consistency over short-term perfection.
Yeah, and a key takeaway here is that this knowledge isn't just theoretical, right? It truly empowers you, our listener, to build lasting, meaningful change in your life. By focusing on designing effective systems, setting up your environment, making behaviors easy and rewarding, rather than just relying on the fickle nature of motivation or willpower, you can foster those consistent, tiny improvements. And those improvements will compound into remarkable results over time. This scientific, actionable framework really provides a clear path forward for anyone looking to transform their behaviors for good.
And considering the immense power of these atomic habits for individual transformation, how those small, consistent changes compound into truly remarkable results over time. Here's a final thought to leave you with. What might happen if communities, or even entire societies, started consciously adopting these principles? Could we intentionally design systems for collective positive habits? Could we foster widespread improvements in health, learning, sustainability, whatever it might be, much like those 1% daily gains we talked about, but on a much larger societal scale? It's a provocative thought, isn't it? As you go about your day today, we encourage you to reflect on just one small habit you could start building using these principles, just one tiny thing, and maybe take a moment to observe the invisible architecture that's already shaping your own daily life. Notice the cues, the cravings, the responses, and the rewards. They're all there, operating under the surface, waiting for you to notice and maybe intentionally redesign them.